They told me Thanksgiving was canceled due to family issues. We'll make it up to you next year. My dad texted. Then I saw their photos online. Best Thanksgiving ever. They posted. When they called me the next day, hi Reddit. I'm Amara, 29F, and I never thought I'd post something like this. Not because I haven't had family drama before, believe me, I have, but because this particular moment made something inside me shift. Like the final click in a lock that had been waiting to turn for years. I want to explain this slowly because stories like this don't just happen out of nowhere. They build up over time, quietly, until one day you look around and realize the ground you were standing on isn't there anymore. So here's some background. I'm the oldest of three. My parents, Clara and Ron, had me when they were young, barely out of college. Money was tight, and time was tighter. From an early age, I was the helper. When Mom had to work late at the office, I made dinner for Levi and Kinsey, my younger siblings. When Dad picked up weekend shifts, I handled the laundry, cleaned the house, made sure homework got done. I wasn't asked. It was just expected. Now, I'm not trying to make myself sound like a martyr. I wasn't a perfect kid. I got into my share of arguments, slammed my bedroom door a little too hard during my teenage years, skipped a few chores here and there. But I always showed up for my family. Always. I didn't go away for college because Mom said she couldn't manage the household without me. I commuted instead, working part-time to help with bills. When Kinsey had her meltdown over algebra in high school, I was the one who stayed up with her until midnight going over equations. When Levi broke his wrist during football, I drove him to every single appointment while Mom was too swamped at work, and Dad couldn't afford another day off. I say all this not to brag, but because it's important to understand where I stood. I wasn't just a daughter. I was the glue, the third parent they never acknowledged. When I finally moved out at 22, it wasn't dramatic. There wasn't some big blow-up. It just happened. I had saved enough to get a tiny one-bedroom apartment about 20 minutes from home. I thought I'd still be a big part of their lives. I figured I'd be over there every weekend, still helping with family dinners, still hosting movie nights, still the go-to person for advice or backup. But the shift was almost immediate. The texts got shorter, the calls fewer. Suddenly, I wasn't included in the small things: Kinsey's art showcase, Levi's weekend barbecue with his friends, family board game night. It was like once I wasn't under their roof, I became less real to them. An afterthought. But Thanksgiving? That was sacred. My grandmother, Mom's mother, used to host a beautiful Thanksgiving dinner every year. Nothing fancy, just warm, homemade food, mismatched plates, and laughter that filled every room. After she passed, the tradition moved to my parents' house. And for a while, it felt like the one thing that stayed consistent. No matter how distant things got, I was always invited. I always came early to help cook, stayed late to clean up. I brought homemade bread one year and got so many compliments that it became my permanent contribution. Thanksgiving was ours. So you can probably imagine how surprised I was when, about 2 weeks before the holiday, I got a text from my dad. Not a phone call, not a group chat with the family. Just a single, short message. Hey, sweetheart. Just a heads up, we're not doing Thanksgiving this year. A lot of family issues going on. We'll make it up to you next year. Love you. I read it 3 times before it sank in. Family issues? What kind of issues? No one had mentioned anything recently. If something serious was going on, illness, conflict, financial trouble, I felt like I would have known. Or at least should have. I called my mom right away. No answer. I left a voicemail asking if everything was okay. I even texted her a little later saying, just checking in, saw Dad's message. Hope everything's all right. Let me know if you need anything. Nothing. I waited a day and called Levi. He picked up, but he sounded distracted, like he didn't really want to talk. Hey. Yeah, he mumbled when I asked about Thanksgiving. Things have been tense. I guess Mom and Dad just didn't feel up for it. Tense how? I pressed. He hesitated. Just family stuff. You know, that's the thing. I didn't know, but I didn't want to push. Levi's never been the best communicator, and I figured maybe there really was something serious going on. Maybe someone was upset or overwhelmed. I tried to give them the benefit of the doubt. Kinsey didn't respond to my message at all, not even a read receipt. I told myself not to take it personally. I made plans with two of my close friends for a quiet little friendsgiving at my apartment. We kept it simple: rotisserie chicken, mashed potatoes, cranberry sauce from a can. We watched a couple of old comedies, lit some candles, and played cards afterward. I even laughed a little, but the whole night, I felt like something was off, like I was missing something I didn't understand. The next morning, I woke up early and instinctively checked my phone. And that's when I saw it. A post from my cousin Drew. A photo of a beautifully decorated dining table, filled with dishes I recognized: mom's stuffing, Kinsey's sweet potato casserole, the patterned plates Grandma used to use. There, smiling in the center of it all, were my parents. Mom was wearing her favorite rust-colored sweater. Dad looked relaxed. Levi was grinning next to Kinsey, who was holding a dish I knew had to be my bread recipe. The caption? Grateful for the best Thanksgiving yet. Family is everything. I stared at that photo for a long time. My phone screen dimmed twice before I realized I hadn't moved. My thumb hovered over the image like I needed to press something that would explain what I was seeing. It didn't feel real at first. I actually convinced myself, for a moment, that maybe it was from last year and Drew had just posted it late. People do that, right? But then I noticed the small centerpiece on the table. A handmade fall decoration that Kinsey had mentioned making just a few days before. She'd even posted a close-up on her story: tiny pumpkins made of cinnamon sticks and felt leaves. It was unmistakable, and it was sitting right in the middle of the table in Drew's photo. So no, it wasn't old. It wasn't some memory post. It was this Thanksgiving, the one I had been told was not happening this year. I kept scrolling. Drew had posted a few more shots to his story. There was one of everyone gathered in the kitchen: Mom and Kinsey laughing at the counter, Dad carving a turkey, Levi tossing a football in the backyard with Drew and another cousin. A group photo in front of the fireplace, where my name used to be written on a little paper leaf that said "Thankful for Amara." Except this time, it wasn't there. And neither was I. I felt something cold settle in my chest. Not anger, not yet. Just a kind of quiet disbelief. Like I'd walked into a room and everyone had forgotten I existed. I didn't say anything at first. I sat there with my untouched breakfast growing cold in front of me and stared at the screen like it might suddenly change. I opened the photo again, zoomed in, counted the chairs. They hadn't just decided last minute to throw something together. This was planned. Carefully, intentionally. The table had been set for 12. There were name cards, matching napkins. Kinsey had even made one of those little menu boards she loves putting together for holidays. They had gone all out. I wasn't just excluded. I had been erased. My friends noticed something was off. I told them I wasn't feeling great, blamed it on too much dessert the night before, but they knew better. I could feel the concerned looks they gave me. I tried to smile, to make jokes, to pretend the whole thing wasn't gnawing a hole through my stomach. But the more I thought about it, the more the small things started connecting in my head. The way Levi had sounded uncomfortable on the phone. The way Kinsey had ghosted my message. The short, vague text from Dad. It wasn't sudden. This wasn't a spontaneous gathering. It had been planned around me. And the worst part? I didn't know why. I kept checking my phone the rest of the day, thinking maybe someone would reach out. Maybe Mom would call, apologize, say it had been a miscommunication. Maybe Kinsey would text a sheepish, "Sorry, it all happened so fast." Anything. But nothing came. Not even a single like on the photo I had posted the night before of our little friend giving. Just silence. That night, I lay in bed, wide awake, replaying every family moment from the last year. I kept asking myself, had I done something? Said something? Missed something? Was it because I hadn't loaned them money last spring when Dad hinted at needing help with the car payment? Or maybe because I couldn't dog sit over the summer when they went to the lake. I had told them I had a work deadline, and Mom had sounded annoyed, but she hadn't brought it up again. At least, not to me. I tried not to spiral. I told myself there had to be an explanation. There had to be. But then, the next morning, my phone rang. It was my dad. I stared at his name on the screen, my thumb hovering over the green button. I let it ring twice, 3 times. Part of me wanted to send it straight to voicemail, but curiosity won. Maybe this was the moment I'd get answers. I answered. "Hey, sweetheart," he said, cheerful like nothing had happened. "Hope you had a nice Thanksgiving." That's when I realized he wasn't calling to explain. He was calling to pretend everything was normal. I sat there holding the phone to my ear, stunned into silence. My dad's voice was light, almost upbeat, like he hadn't just cut me out of something sacred, like I hadn't spent the last 24 hours staring at photos of a dinner I wasn't invited to. "Yeah," I finally said, my voice low and even. "I had a nice Thanksgiving." He hummed in approval, as if we were just checking off a box. "That's good. That's good. We were thinking we could all get together sometime next week. Maybe grab dinner. Make up for the change in plans." Change in plans. I felt a tightness in my chest, but I didn't let it show. I'd learned long ago not to give my parents the satisfaction of seeing my hurt. That only led to patronizing comments like, "You're too sensitive," or "You always take things the wrong way." So I took a breath and asked, as casually as I could, "Everything okay at home? You mentioned family issues." There was a pause, just a beat too long. "Ah, you know," Dad said with a little chuckle, "just some tension with your aunt and her boys. Didn't want to deal with any drama, so we decided to keep it simple. Just the immediate family." The words hung there like smoke. "Immediate family," I repeated softly. "Exactly," he said, with not even a flicker of hesitation. "We figured it was for the best. It was all a bit last minute." I could hear voices in the background, laughter, someone opening a cabinet. Mom's voice calling out something about leftovers. It was the sound of a home that was warm, fed, and full, and I wasn't in it. I nodded slowly, even though he couldn't see me. "Got it. I'll talk to your mom about dinner next week," he went on, like this was just a scheduling call. "We'll find a time that works. Don't be a stranger, okay?" "Sure," I said, and hung up before he could say anything else. And I just sat there. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This wasn't about my aunt. This was about me. They had intentionally cut me out, and now they were trying to smooth it over with dinner at some casual chain restaurant, like that would undo it. The thing is, my parents had always been a little transactional. If I did something for them, helped with taxes, watched their dog, picked up groceries, they were warm, generous even. But if I said no, or set a boundary, or prioritized something else, the warmth evaporated. I became distant, cold, ungrateful, and I had tolerated it for years. But this was different. This wasn't just thoughtless. It was deliberate, calculated. I wasn't just excluded, I was replaced. And not a single person thought I was worth an explanation. So I started thinking, not about yelling or confronting them or begging for answers. No, I was done chasing clarity from people who benefited from my confusion. I thought about something else. My parents, especially my mom, had built this image of our family over the years, something polished and pristine. She loved hosting. She had this little tradition of posting holiday albums on Facebook with overly cheerful captions like "Family is everything" or "Blessed beyond words." She treated every gathering like a photo op, and every photo like proof that we were all exactly as perfect as she wanted people to believe. But here's the thing, she had a blind spot. Me. She never really considered what I knew, what I had seen, the things I'd done for them behind the scenes. The years of receipts I'd kept, not literal ones, but memories, stories, screenshots, the things they'd rather forget. And maybe, just maybe, it was time they remembered. Not by yelling, not by sulking, but by turning their carefully crafted image against them. I opened my laptop. I had an idea, one that had been simmering quietly in the back of my mind for years, waiting for a reason to come to life. Now, I had one. I clicked through old emails, pulled up a folder I hadn't touched in a while. It was something I had started casually, back when I was still in school, during a period where I thought I might become a writer. Just personal essays, reflections, stories about growing up in my family, about being the third parent, about being taken for granted. I had never shared them, but I had always known I might. One day, I started reading through them again. And as I did, something strange happened. I stopped feeling small. The sadness, the ache of being forgotten, began to fade. What replaced it was clarity. I wasn't just left out of Thanksgiving. I had been dismissed, minimized, underestimated for years. They thought they could cut me out quietly and no one would notice. They were wrong, because I was going to make sure they were seen for who they really were. Not with a fight, but with the truth. Over the next few days, I didn't respond to any of my mom's texts. She finally messaged me on Sunday night. Nothing direct, of course, just a breezy, thinking of doing Christmas cookie tins again this year. Any flavor requests? It was classic mom. Cheerful, oblivious, polished on the outside, just like always. No mention of Thanksgiving. No hint of apology. She was testing the waters, trying to see if I'd fall back into line without a fuss. If I'd play my usual part, the reliable daughter who always came back, no matter how many times she was sidelined. But I wasn't interested in playing anymore. Instead of replying, I kept working on something that had been growing quietly in the background, my own kind of holiday project. The personal essays I'd once written had given me a foundation, but this time, I wanted to go deeper, more specific. I started documenting everything I remembered. The patterns, the gaslighting, the way my parents used me when it was convenient and disappeared when it wasn't. The way they played favorites and rewrote history to make themselves feel better. Each entry came easier than the last. There was the year I spent all night helping them prepare Thanksgiving dinner after mom threw out her back, only to be cropped out of every single photo. The time they forgot my college graduation gift, then blamed me for not sending a reminder. And the countless holidays I spent helping Levi cover for missed chores, missed rent, missed everything because he's just going through a rough patch, and you've always been the strong one. I had written all of it down, at first just for myself, but now I had a purpose. Kinsey had recently started a small blog, very aesthetic, very curated, mostly about home decor, baking, seasonal things. She had promoted it heavily in our family group chat and gotten a surprising amount of attention online. She even posted affiliate links and sponsored content from time to time. And just last week, she'd emailed me asking for help editing a few drafts. She said I was so good with words, and she trusted my judgment. I hadn't replied then, but now I had a different idea. You see, she had sent me her blog's backend login information so I could leave notes directly on her drafts. And she never changed the password. It wasn't illegal. I didn't break into anything. She had given me access. And I didn't touch her sponsored posts or her brand partnerships. I didn't want to ruin her business. But I did upload one of my essays to a hidden page on the site. I titled it, "When Family First Means Everyone But You." And I shared a story. Not angry, not spiteful, just honest. I didn't use names. I didn't point fingers. But anyone who knew me and knew them would recognize the details. I described a holiday where a daughter was told plans were canceled due to family issues, only to discover later that the issue was her. That the family had gathered without her, smiling for photos, pretending she didn't exist. I described what it feels like to sit with that kind of silence. To realize that your presence was never essential, just optional. And I made sure the tone stayed calm, even thoughtful. It wasn't a rant. It was a reflection. Something people could read and feel. Not a call-out, but a mirror. Then I left the post unpublished. For now. Because I wasn't done yet. Over the next week, I started gathering other stories, small, quiet moments that chipped away at me over the years. Not just about my parents, but how Levi always got a pass. How Kinsey played innocent while stirring the pot. How I was always told to be understanding, while no one ever returned the favor. I started rewriting those memories. Not to wallow, but to reclaim them. And once I had enough, I planned to publish them one at a time. Scheduled, consistent, carefully worded. On Kinsey's blog. She could delete them, sure. Eventually. But not before people saw. And not before the perfect reader did. My parents. Because Mom read every word Kinsey posted. She liked to comment on them with little emojis and phrases like, "So proud of my girl," and such wisdom. She even shared the posts on Facebook to show off to her friends from church. I wanted her to read my words for once. Not because I wanted her validation, but because I wanted her to see me. And I knew she wouldn't be able to ignore it. Of course, I didn't stop there. There was something else I had up my sleeve, something I'd been working on for months before Thanksgiving even happened. Something that would make all of this sting a little bit more once it came to light. But that part? That would have to wait. Because 2 days later, Kinsey called me. And she didn't sound sweet anymore. She sounded panicked. Kinsey's voice came through the phone like a siren. Sharp, breathless, no trace of her usual polished tone. "Did you post something on my blog?" I paused, keeping my voice even. "Why do you ask?" "Don't play games with me, Emery." Her voice cracked slightly. "People are messaging me, asking if I'm okay. My subscriber count dropped overnight. And my mom just called me in tears because some church friends sent her a link to this post and asked if it was about us." I let that sit for a moment. Then I said, "You mean the one about being excluded from Thanksgiving? About being told there were family issues only to find out the real issue was me?" Silence. "Kinsey, I didn't know they weren't inviting you," she snapped, her defensiveness creeping in. I thought you'd changed your mind about coming." "No, you didn't," I replied quietly. "You saw my name disappear from the group chat plans and you didn't ask why. Because it didn't bother you. It never does. That's not fair, but it's true." I could hear her breathing on the other end, unsteady and shallow. "You had no right to post that. You humiliated Mom. She's saying she can't go to church this week. Dad's furious. He thinks you've turned people against us." "They turned people against themselves," I said. "I just told the truth." Kinsey was silent again, but I could tell she didn't hang up because part of her wanted to know what came next. She always did prefer being prepared for fallout instead of surprised by it. "I didn't publish the rest," I said. "But I could. You're trying to destroy this family." "No. I'm trying to stop pretending like this family hasn't been destroying me for years." Another pause. Then her voice dropped lower. "What do you want?" There it was, the question they'd never bothered to ask me before. I didn't hesitate. "I want you to tell them, all of you, that I know exactly what happened. That I was cut out of Thanksgiving on purpose. That no one even had the courage to admit it. I want a real apology, not a fake text, not a dinner invite, not a cookie tin." Kinsey scoffed slightly. "You think they'll actually do that?" "No," I said. "But now they know what happens if they don't." I didn't hear from her again that night. But I did get a call the next morning from my dad. Not a casual one this time. His voice was flat, like he was choosing his words carefully. "Your mother is very upset." "I bet she is." "We didn't mean to hurt you," he said. "It just seemed easier this way. We didn't think you'd mind." I waited for more. For a sorry. For any recognition of what they'd actually done. It never came. So I said, "Then I guess you can't be too surprised that I did what I did." He didn't argue. Just sighed. "We'd like to talk. In person. Clear the air." That's when I realized the real shift had already happened. They weren't calling because they regretted it. They were calling because I disrupted the image. The tidy, respectable, smiling image of a perfect family. And now they were scared someone might look too closely. I agreed to meet, on my terms, at a neutral cafe with no surprises. When we sat down a few days later, I didn't raise my voice. I didn't cry. I let them talk first. Mom fidgeted with her sleeve. "I want you to know we didn't mean to exclude you. We didn't think you'd want to be around all the tension. You've always been more sensitive to that kind of thing." I looked her in the eye. "You didn't even ask." She didn't deny it. "I'm not interested in rewriting history," I said. "And I'm not interested in being the scapegoat for keeping the peace anymore. If I'm part of this family, then I'm treated like it. If not, then we stop pretending." Dad looked away, jaw tight. And for the first time in years, they didn't push back. They didn't grovel either. That's not who they are. But they listened. They sat in that discomfort, forced to see the version of me they had ignored for so long. Not the obedient one. Not the fixer. just someone who finally had enough. We agreed on a few things that day: boundaries, clarity, no more pretending everything was fine while ignoring the rot underneath. I didn't go to Christmas. I didn't want another staged apology or gift bag or forced group photo. Instead, I spent it with people who had shown up for me without being asked. Friends who knew what it meant to be chosen family. And my blog posts? I eventually moved them to my own space. They're still up, still anonymous. But they found an audience, people who knew exactly what it felt like to be the forgotten one at the table. These days, my relationship with my parents is cautious. We talk sometimes, short calls, occasional texts. But they know now I'm not afraid to walk away if the cost of staying is silence. I didn't destroy the family. I just stopped letting it destroy me.